Marco, lovely to see you. Now, you've run a lot of the great hotels around Europe. So tell me, what inspired you to become a hotelier, firstly? Leader.
Good to see you, Chris, as always, and thank you for having me. The inspiration came from many sides, and upbringing that connected me with food and people from a very young age. My grandfather was a musician, and grandmother used to throw parties when the maestro came back after a concert. And the parties used to take place in the rural Campagna of Parma during the summertime. And that connected people, artists, and people from different backgrounds with food, art, and literature. But yet behind that merriment and those occasions of celebration, there was a very simple yet sophisticated CRM system that enabled grandmother to make sure that every person sitting around those very long tables had exactly in front of them what they preferred to have. But we never knew about the CRM system until grandmother passed away, and we realized that she was actually running a little business from those things and those parties. And then when I moved to London in the late 80s, was inspired by a great hotelier that in those days was running the Hyde Park Hotel that, in Knightsbridge, that became my very first experience in a hotel. In those days, part of Trust House Forte. And I was inspired by not just the sophistication and gracefulness of hospitality, but also the pure act of serving people and receiving joy as part of that beautiful transaction between human beings.
And what does leadership mean to you now, after running all these great resorts and things?
Leadership is about a greater purpose, is about serving other people so that they can serve better other people. And that servant leadership is about putting yourself at times behind your team and sometimes in front of the team to lead. At other time, it's like the pilot fish of the bird flock, where you have a leader that moves to the front, but sometimes just moves to the back. And making sure that not only the objectives of the group, but also the individual aspirations of the individual members of the teams are fulfilled, because only that will give us a sustainable growth that is good for everyone. So as you grow, perhaps with more experience, but certainly with age, you develop a more pro-social view of life, where if we are purely aiming at productivity, you may achieve that goal, but that is a short-term goal. But if we're looking at the sustainability and a greater relation between work and the individual fulfillment of people's aspiration, you achieve a much greater goal in life.
And tell me, what's been the greatest learning in your career overall?
Not one single learning, but a number of learnings. And the common denominator is that learning is not a school or university journey, or indeed only an academic journey. Learning is about having an empty mind and an open heart on every single conversation, and never arrive into a dialogue with a preconception of what that dialogue or conversation can be about. And that stems from the first encounter with a perceived challenging guest, to a difficult HR conversation, indeed to a challenging budget submission, when you may expect that in the first instance you may just be rejected. But really entering into each dialogue with that genuine emptiness of mind and open-heartedness that actually allows you to be ever so slightly vulnerable, but that vulnerability is what makes us human. And no algorithm could actually replace that.
No, I understand. Tell me a story about something that's really influenced you in your career.
There are many. I think that you're probing to one of the stories that you've recently heard me sharing, and it was actually during my honeymoon in Chile and Argentina, where my better half and I planned the whole journey around wine and food. I can't remember if it was around that sequence necessarily, but yes, definitely food and wine were involved. And the second or third night in Buenos Aires, we encountered this individual that was presented to us as a tour guide. And then after we met him, he said, "Oh, I will see you tomorrow night at my house." And we couldn't quite figure out what he meant. My Spanish used to be good, but it wasn't that great. And I thought he definitely said that we were going to meet him at his house. But that was the Professor Frango from Buenos Aires University, who delivered us the most unique wine masterclass that we've ever experienced. Indeed, it was at his home. And the glasses, absolutely fine glasses. The first thing I noticed, and for a declared ever so slightly OCD person, I noticed that the glasses weren't as clean as I would have expected, but they were clean. However, they had sediments from wine because he never used a dishwasher or indeed any liquid soap. It was done in the old way because he didn't want to remove the actual sediment from the glasses. But that masterclass in wines, after a few bottles and no spittoon involved, led to a lesson in gastrosophy, because Professor Frango was and still is holding the desk of gastrosophia at the University of Buenos Aires. And indeed, that led me to a life pursuit that philosophy and food are intrinsically connected with one another.
Very lovely. What would you tell your 18-year-old self, if you could?
My 18-year-old self, apart from life lessons that we don't want to share in this particular recording, is to be even more safely careless than I could have been, meaning that go out, experience, enjoy, and genuinely live that moment, as in the profession and world of hospitality, we are blessed with unique experiences that no other aspect or facet of life could ever give. And indeed, in those moments, let yourself fall if you fall must, but really fly in a careless way, as in wave your hands in the air as if you don't care, because nobody will be there to watch you and judge you.
Beautiful. And failure, how's failure affected you in life?
Profoundly so. I come from a background where failure was seen as just failure. Almost as if you don't want to cry after you have fallen from a bicycle, because that's not boys do. Well, Cure said boys don't cry, but indeed they do. And whenever I've encountered failure, I rebelled against the preconception that had been kind of trying into my upbringing, that failure was not good, and embraced it, not in a way to accept it without any critique, but genuinely learn from it, but not learning in a self-defeatist way, or indeed in a self-pity way, but learning from what could I have done differently to make it better. And then as a second stage of realization of failure, to actually realize that sometimes, just sometimes, as long as you've put every bit of energy into something, failure is not failure, but is a learning opportunity to actually grow from that.
And success?
Success is giving. Success is giving back. Nothing can give more pleasure than see the reaction from people, guests, fellow colleagues, peers, member of your team or member of an old team, that after 5, 10, 15 years, they call you with that excited voice that says, I've just achieved this goal, or I've just achieved this position. And within yourself, you can say, maybe, just maybe in a very small part, I've been able to enable that to happen for that individual person.
And what's the final question? What's it like to run one of the great resorts in Europe?
Adrenaline on 22 hours a day. And even when you're sleeping, the adrenaline is still pumping. One of the greatest honor and pleasure to be able to serve and to see luxury hospitality transcending just the meaning of luxury hospitality, but bringing that simplicity to the essence of beauty. Indeed, beautiful things are simple, and simple things are beautiful. So that realization that the more we turn experiences into the very basic elements of what is like for someone, regardless of their background, to experience something authentic, natural, and being part of an exchange where you're not being acculturated by an experience, but you are participating in that experience, that has no money. And that is what discerning travelers are looking for, not necessarily a 5-star experience as we know it, but something that transcends the number of stars in a resort or hotel front entrance, but enriches that stay into something that goes beyond. And to see captains of industries that you normally watch on television hugging colleagues, members of the team on their arrival after the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th year, there is nothing that compares to that.
That's lovely. Marco, my thanks to you. Thanks so much for saying all that.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.